They did not plan on coming here, and we had not planned on going there for Christmas. There was some conversation about going to New York for Christmas, but Sydney just is not ready to take both babies. And we just get a little used to being too far for that 5 hour to New York. So then they were just and Andrew is, I mean, he's a really underadjusted BA, two masters, right? There's just some adjustment global and stuff. So they decided, so they're not going. They didn't go above the boat, but Abby came and said that they were going to be down there. So Abby and I went for Christmas. He's doing much better, and I was just showing Vanessa earlier. And without, we knew that he had some stipends and stuff, Katie, but he's really well paid for the level, and he's not like that. So, you know, we had some side words, and we knew that there was some stuff like that, like, you know, you see something say, that has a learning label on it for small children, it's like, you know. But, so they're trying to get him in for some SSA, trying to figure out when they're setting him up for success. He's not going to be successful if they don't have a doctor. Like you got your books and trying to I know. Well, but I'll just tell you, Katie, he can read some of those words in the book. I was just showing Vanessa where he's reading words like Wally is lonely and only has a world-friendly bug in advertisements. Yeah. And adventure, like he's reading really big words, so like we're guessing it's great. So, and Sydney didn't realize, I mean, we knew some, but then she found him reading to them. She was like, and so then some other stuff came together, you know, Las Vegas show, but it's really hard emotional time, like really bad emotional time. And I was like, have you had any teeth? You know, not being around. And she's like, no, we learned how to put on our computer. Well, after we sort of put this all together about how well we were made, she said, well, she came back to me and asked me, what is a rifle? No, I wasn't going to share. And I think I did. What is it? And he's 4. Well, he's almost 5. But he didn't know what a rifle was, but he could read the word. So she's like, maybe he did see some of that. But, you know, I said, you have to be really careful. You can read everything you guys got. He can read better than President Trump. You. And they're saying wonderful children, you know, they're good stuff. And I think it sometimes he's got some like social emotional stuff that people don't understand. Well, I think it's because his brain is here, but his heart is still here. That's so yeah, and she can't. Yeah. Like I'm safe. This massacre happened, but I'm safe. Right. so it was, after this, a couple days after this, I was with, I really did that, but I was just trying to teach fourth grade, and I was showing her, and she was, she said, she said, be that child, she will be that mom. She, if he goes to public school, she's got to go forward and way out and not starting the out. She's like, they will ruin you. They will ruin you.
All right, that was our 10-minute break. We're going to come back together and start taking consensus on section 110. Find the rest of your team and pull them on in.
They put my and that's what they did to my brother too. They took the door off the closet there. They made him sit in the closet with the door open. It is. Yeah, well, and you know, Katie knows my brother doesn't know. They know more than Henry. She's like fierce.
Okay, so we're taking consensus on section 110. Number 1. Okay, so it just says that the early learning provider must have and follow those written policies. They're listed in subsection 3. So subsection 3 might actually be a place that we would want to start, kind of nailing down what those policies are, and come back, you can let me know. But number 1 is a weight of 1. Can we take consensus on 1, or do we need to look at number 3 that has all of the policies listed? I'm hearing we need to look at 3, we don't need to look at 3. Okay, so let's look at 3 first. It's going to become 3. Oh, goodness. Okay. So an early learning program and staff policies must include but are not limited to, and you can let me know if you think this is too redundant if we take consensus on each subsection. So A, do we all agree that A should be in there? B, do we all agree B should be in there? Is that a good strategy? So that we're not jumping around kind of throughout the list and getting too confused.
How about
Groups? Okay. Okay, so let's do A through E. A, so all of the this must be included in the staff policies. All of the program information in the parent or guardian handbook, except for the fees, keeping staff records current in the electronic workforce registry, job descriptions, compensation and benefits, professional development expectations and plans, and expectations for attendance and conduct. Let's take consensus on A through E that those are staff policies that need to be included. Just on the wording. We're not even talking about the weight yet, just the language. Yes, centers would like 1 minute to caucus among themselves. All right, that was 1 minute. Are we ready to take consensus on A through E? All right, so let's take consensus on A through E. So I'm seeing from Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. From Centers, still thinking, I see 3 5s. I can come back to Centers. From Parents, I'm seeing a couple of 4s and 5s, rest 5s. From Licensing, I see all 5s. And from Family Home, I see 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 4. And we're going to come back to Centers, all 5s. All right, so we have consensus on A through E. So now let's look at F. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you did have 3s, so we can document our comments.
Okay. The main thing that we have an issue with is C. We do not want those staff policies to include what we're paying each individual, because staff could be paid different amounts of money and their benefit packages could be different. So if you put that in a generalized staff policy, somebody's going to go, well, I want what they're getting. You know, it makes it competitive when normally in a company, what somebody's getting paid and what their benefit package is confidential. And they're not allowed to talk to each other about it.
Okay. Is that a response? So we have a response from Centers.
All this, we thought the job description was logical, but we thought compensation meant when, whether the third Thursday or bi-weekly or once a month. I think that's what we thought. We didn't think hourly, not the amount, pay structure, but not the actual compensation amount.
Oh, goodness. Oh, it's because you were deleting. I thought something was happening. So compensation structure is the proposed pay structure. Pay schedule. Okay, so we have a recommendation for the language pay schedule. So can we include that in an intent note that this is like the how you're getting paid monthly, and we'll let the Dell Tech graders worry about the language.
I have a question. Hallie, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that these are policies, but this doesn't all have to be in a staff handbook. Like I could have, it doesn't say in a staff handbook, it just says a staff policy. So I could have a separate, this is the pay schedule, and hand it to them. It doesn't have to be in my handbook. So then they're not seeing.
So I would let licensing maybe address
So
that.
this doesn't all have to be in a handbook. They could be standalone policies, correct?
They could be. We would just be looking to make sure that you got them to everybody, but yes.
Okay.
All right, so we have consensus on A through E. Let's look at F. F is fairly long, so again, we can take these in chunks. So let's look at 1 through 5. So I all the way through V. Oops, it's okay. So let's look at I through V, just those first 5. So early learning program staff responsibilities, 4, so these also must be included in the policy. I, child supervision requirements, including preventing children's access to unlicensed space. II, so 2, child growth and development. 3, age-appropriate curriculum. 4, teacher-child interactions. And 5, child protection, guidance, and discipline techniques. So just looking at those first 5. Oh. Can we take consensus on those first 5?
For III, could we change it to developmentally appropriate curriculum because not every 3-year-old is at the same level?
Okay, so there's a recommendation to change that to developmentally appropriate curriculum. Are the teams okay with that? Seeing nods, nods, nods. Parents? Seeing a couple of nods. All right. So let's take consensus on 1 through 5, with 3 being changed to developmentally appropriate curriculum. So from centers, I see 5s, all 5s. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. From parents, I see 2 hands up. Do I need to come back to parents? I'll come back to parents. Licensing, I see all 5s. And family home, I see 5s and 4s. All right, so we'll come back to parents. Yes, parents would like 30 seconds to caucus. Okay, so that was our 30 seconds. Parents, are you ready or do you need more time? Okay, so let's take consensus from the parents. So I see 4s and 5s. All right, so we have consensus on 1 through 5. Let's look at 6 through 10. So VI down to X. Safe sleep practices if applicable, food service practices, off-site field trips, transporting children, health, safety, and sanitation procedures. Let's take consensus on 6 through 10. So from licensing, I see all 5s. From parents, I see all 5s. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. From centers, I see all 5s. And from family home, I see 5s and a 4. All right, so let's look at 11 through, highlight there. Okay, so 11, medication management procedures, medical emergencies, fire, disaster, and evacuation plans, mandatory reporting of suspected child abuse, neglect, and exploitation per the RCW, and implementation of child's individual health care or special needs plan. So that's 11 through 14. Let's take consensus on 11 through 14. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. From centers, 5s. From parents, I see all 5s. From licensing, all 5s. And from family home, I see 5s and a 4. All right. So then the last 4 in that section, following non-smoking, vaping, alcohol, and drug regulations, overnight care if applicable, religious and cultural diversity, including all children and families, and non-discrimination. So let's take consensus on 15 through 18. So from family home, I see 5s and a 4. From licensing, I see all 5s. From parents, I see all 5s. Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. And from centers, I see all 5s. All right. And so now we'll read G through I. G, staff responsibilities if the family home licensee, center director, assistant director, or program supervisor is absent from the early learning program. H, a plan that includes how both administrative and child care taking duties are met when a job requires such dual responsibilities. And I, observation, evaluation, and feedback policies pursuant to WAC 461. So let's take consensus on G through I. Oh, do you have a question? Oh, sorry, I didn't see the pinwheel. So family home?
Thank you. What on H, as family home providers, we wear all the hats. So am I going to have to list every single thing I do in this policy because of H?
Okay.
I know, but the staff, okay, then I have to list every single thing that my partner does when I'm not there. Yeah. No, I'm asking, do I have to list all those things? Because I wear multiple hats, and so does he, or so does my lead teacher when we're not there.
Licensing?
I am looking at it that it is talking about the responsibilities. It isn't talking about take this child in and change their diaper. But it would be talking about your responsibilities, which would be food prep. Maybe the person that you're working with never, ever, ever does billing, so that would not be part of their responsibilities. So it would really be focusing on what pieces are essential that they would be doing in your stead.
Okay. Centers, did you have a follow-up to that? Oh, okay. Then we'll wait and see if family home has a response. Do you guys need any additional follow-up or clarification? Okay. So then we'll come over to centers.
Our comment is on I. It
Okay.
says it's pursuant to WAC 0461. There is no WAC 0461, so we just like clarification on that.
So let's throw that to our Dell technical writers. Is it the old 0461? The reference in I.
There is a comment at some point that says we need a new section 0461, but I am not finding anywhere where that's actually been written.
So does 0461 exist?
That's the question.
That is what I asked. They are conferring. Can see them.
What does it say?
Okay. So our technical team is looking at that. Can we take consensus on G? I didn't hear any concerns about G. And can we take consensus on H? Oh, did you have a question about G? Okay. So can we take consensus on G and H, since we have a question about I that is still outstanding? Let's take consensus on G and H. All right, so from family home, I am seeing 1 4, and the rest 5s. From licensing, I see all 5s. From parents, I see all 5s. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s, though some of them went down. And then from centers, I see all 5s. All right. Can I make the assumption that we can take consensus on the weight? This is not weighted. Let's take consensus on the weight. I am seeing 5s from the centers.
Not weighted?
From Head Start ECAP, I see 5s. From parents, I see 5s. Are you guys still discussing? Okay. 5s from the centers, 5 from licensing, and all 5s from family home. All right. So we have a question about I, so we'll just make a note about that is still lingering. Oh, do we have an answer?
Answer. This was a note for us because what we discovered is that we've got a list in that program administration section of different policies, and there is no policy in that section. So the note for us was 0461 could be the policy that would include the observation, evaluation, and feedback process. So no, it currently does not exist, but if we would be consistent with everything else we've done in this chapter, we would include that in the policy section. Hope that helps.
Okay, so Family Home is recommending that we remove pursuant to and the citation, given it doesn't exist. Centers say okay, Head Start ECAP? Okay, parents? See yes, and licensing, all right. Okay, so let's take consensus on I. It just now says observation, evaluation, and feedback policies. So from centers, I see all 5s, Head Start ECAP, all 5s, parents, all 5s, licensing, all 5s. And from family home, I see 3 4s and 3 5s. All right, so that was number 3. Let's go back up to number 1, because number 1 referenced 3. So number 1 says an early learning provider must have and follow written policies for the early learning program staff. The staff policies must include everything we just went over and must be reviewed and approved by the department prior to issuing a provider's initial license. That is a weight of 1. Okay, clarifying question from family home?
Since this might be different than the staff policies we already have, does that mean existing providers, when they update that, they will have to submit that for approval from the department?
Licensing?
Yes.
Yeah. Licensing?
Can we add a caveat that we would like you to send them in ahead of time, otherwise we would do it at the monitor visit. I mean, that would be part of our monitor if we hadn't already reviewed them. So you can have us there for an hour and a half while we review your policies, or you can send them to us when you do them.
And then do you let us know that you approve of them?
Oh, yeah, we would let you know. And, you know, hopefully by the time this comes in, we're going to be further down the road on how we communicate in our new system, in our provider portal and all that, and so that this would be a very seamless thing. But at this point, yes, we would want to know that, I mean, if everything stayed just as it is today, when you did them, we would hope that you would send them so we can review them and get back to you if there's any question, and if there's not, we would still get back to you and say, nope, these look great.
Okay,
And you can do it by email if you want.
great. Yes, Lori is requesting a sidebar with licensing. How much time would you like? 2 minutes. Okay. All right, so we're going to come back early from that sidebar. Licensing?
Licensing would like to note that there was stuff taken out of this one that we would like put back in,
Okay.
which includes that it would be prior to issuing a provider's initial license and notify the department when substantial changes are made,
Okay.
which clarifies it a little bit for everybody.
Okay. Yes, from parents?
I have a question. Where it says an early learning provider must have and follow written policies, do we really need to have and follow? Because we do? Because if you don't, then you don't really have to follow? Oh, no, I didn't mean it to sound like that. I'm just wondering.
Okay, did we get a result?
Yes?
461.
Use your microphone, please.
Taking those two sections.
Okay.
No, you're asking the right question, and that is exactly why the and follow is there. It's not
Okay.
enough just to have something in print, but you have to follow those policies.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So let's take consensus on the language, adding in that clarifying statement and notify the department when substantial changes are made. So let's take consensus on the language of 1. I know, the boxes. All right, so let's go to parents first. Measuring consensus on the language of 1. So I see 5s from parents, from centers. I see 5s and I see all 5s from Head Start ECAP. I see all 5s from licensing, all 5s, and from family home, I see 3 4s and the rest are 5s. All right, let's take consensus on the weight of 1. Consensus on the weight of 1 from family home. I see 2 4s and the rest 5s from licensing. I see 5s from parents. I see all 5s from Head Start ECAP. I see 5s, and from centers I see all 5s. All right. So we have consensus on 1, the language and the weight, so we move to number 2. Originally, the small group proposed to move this to staff records. When the Del Tech writers did their revision, they saw that this would be a more appropriate place and that this content wasn't elsewhere in the WAC. So that's why they proposed to re-include it. I'm seeing a pinwheel from licensing.
Sorry, this is just back up about number 1 because the last sentence that we put in there, the words are all right, but would you go up? Because how it reads, the second sentence is staff policies must notify the department when changes are made. So I would just ask that somebody fix that.
The Del Tech writers. Right? Okay, so looking at 2, this says that all early learning program staff must be trained on all early learning program policies and retrained as policies are changed or updated. This is a weight of 6. Let's take consensus on the language first. Language only on number 2. So I call for consensus. So from licensing, I see all 5s. From parents, I see 5s. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. Centers, do you want 1 minute? Okay, centers would like 1 minute to caucus. Okay, so that was our 1 minute. We need to take our consensus from family home and from centers. Do you need any additional time? No, we're still taking consensus on the language. Okay, so on the language from centers, I see 5s and 1 abstention. Family home. I see 4s and a 5. And a 5 from centers. All right, so we have consensus on the language. This is a weight of 6. So we're going to take consensus on the weight. And if you have a proposed recommendation, you can make that recommendation. I see a pinwheel. Family home.
I feel that this weight should be NA, or we feel that this weight should be NA, sorry. Because there is already a weight when the staff, on the staff policies, which include all of our program policies, which, I mean, we're going to be double dinged, and I know it's going to go through the crosswalk process, but I would feel more comfortable if this was NA, because this is a double ding.
Licensing?
I would say that I would like us to make note of it, but I'm not willing to say that I'm going to approve an NA until I know that things are, I mean, we would need to know that they truly are. And right now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm having trouble keeping track of where we did and where we didn't weight things. And so I don't want people double dinged, but on the other hand, I don't want to miss something that, in our experience, has been a big issue at times. So I hear you, and I agree with you in theory. I couldn't vote for an NA, or I couldn't go with an NA.
So family home?
Then tabling it until, tabling just the weight until whoever does whatever it is they're supposed to do to find out if it.
Okay. So do we have consensus to table the weight with the intention that the Del Tech team is going to see if this is weighted elsewhere? Yes, please. Yes, please. I'm hearing yes. Yes from licensing parents. I see a pinwheel, so we'll hear your comment.
My question or comment is, since we're going to be cross-checking these, if it isn't weighted in another place, is this weight okay? Because if we, I think I'm getting confused, but if we table it, then we have to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not weighted someplace else, can we just go with that? When they check that, when Dell checks the weight, after they cross-check it.
Okay. So I think I hear what you're saying. Let me get confirmation that it's okay for the Del Tech team to look at this. We're going to table the weight, and then we can take some recommendations on what we think the weight should be to see if there's consensus there or if that needs to go for further discussion. So Head Start, ECAP, are you guys okay tabling the weight and having the Del Tech team make sure that this isn't weighted elsewhere? I'm seeing nods. Centers? Are you okay tabling the weight for 2 so that the Del Tech team can make sure it's... Yeah, we just have a comment on the weight, but we'll okay. Okay, so we're going to table the weight for 2 so that the Del Tech team can see if it's weighted elsewhere, with the intention that if it is weighted elsewhere, this would be NA. If it's not weighted elsewhere, then we will revisit the weight and have a discussion on the weight. I think you were recommending that is 6 okay as a weight, but I think I'm hearing from mumbles that it probably is not. Is that, I'm seeing nods and nods. So let's make a bubble and let's record what our recommendations. If this had to be weighted, number 2 had to be weighted, what would you recommend the weight be? Yeah, do you guys want a 1-minute team caucus? Okay, let's take a 1-minute team caucus, and when we come back, we're going to record what you would recommend the weight to be. Oh, does our Dell Tech team have a? Okay. Is there a minute of caucus time up? Okay, so let's hear from our Dell Tech team, and then we will hear from the group.
So we do have a comment in the bubble. I don't know if you can see it. We have a note there that says, NRM asked Dell to confirm this isn't duplicated anywhere else. Dell Tech cannot find this substantive rule anywhere else in the chapter. So we did look for this specific wording, and we're not finding it anywhere else at this time. So we checked. We can check again if you'd like.
Okay. So if you have a computerized copy, but it's up here, that it's very small, that they have checked. This is not duplicative elsewhere in this chapter of the WAC, and so it would reckon a weight. Family home, and then parents.
I have a question for Dell Tech, and because I'm not savvy enough to get there fast enough, where it says that we have to create program policies and have those and follow those, does it not say in there that, in that section, that we have to review that with the staff as well? And the other part is where we just did an early, the staff policy thing that we just did, does it not say above that we have to have staff policies, and somewhere in there doesn't it say we have to share those with the staff? Okay.
This just says what it should include.
Hallie, can I offer a solution here?
Yeah.
I think a possible solution might be in number 2, to include the retrain as policies are updated or changed. So initial, we have, you must review with your staff, and then if things are updated, that you're training them and have 2 separate. Would that help?
Yeah, so number 2, I think, can you repeat that? I think I was following all of the scrolling and missed.
Bring to the review, review with staff.
Oh, up at the
And then
top?
2 is talking about training them. So the 1 is you must have and follow your written policies, and then 2 is the training piece of it, but the training is really not anywhere else except here.
So the recommendation is to, did you have a recommendation on language change or weight, or you're just clarifying? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So the training piece is unique to 2. Okay. So family home, do we need clarification about the difference between the being trained and must review the policies? Oh, no, the policies must be reviewed by the department. Okay. We get it. I think you're not getting, we agree with that. Okay. So then we're on a weight of 6. Do we have recommendations on what the weight should be, or do we still want to table the weight? And I'm going to pause and come back because I know that the parents had a pinwheel up, and I want to make sure that we don't lose that comment.
Actually, no, I was just going to say the same thing as family homes about having and following, but if that training piece is completely separate, then that's a separate thing.
Okay. Okay. So we're back to the weight. It's a weight of 6. Do we have recommendations on the weight, or can we take consensus on a weight of 6?
Centers would prefer a 4.
Okay, so centers are recommending a 4. Okay, so family home would like to caucus for 2 minutes. We have a proposed weight of 4 for number 2. Barwith Licensing? Okay. So it looks like we're over our 2 minutes, but it looks like we need additional time, so we're going to put another 2 minutes on the clock. Yes, parents would like to sidebar with licensing. Licensing, are you okay with that? All right. All right, so that was all of our sidebar group caucus time. Do we need any additional time? Family home, do you need additional time? Okay, so we had time to have some team caucus, some sidebar conversations. A weight of 4 was proposed. Do we have any additional recommendations? Family home?
If we go back to 0108, under staff orientations, number 1, the staff orientations includes a training on all, on staff policies, and that has a weight of 5. And so this delivery and training on our programs, which includes our staff policies, is already weighted, and so we would like the weight on 110, section 2 to be NA.
Okay. Up.
We would ask for a 30-second caucus.
All right, 30 seconds is on the clock. All right, that was 30 seconds. Licensing, do you need any more time? Do you need additional time?
I just want to say that we're looking at two different versions, and one of them kind of says NA on the orientation, and the other one says a weight of 5. So as long as it's weighted in one place or the other, we could live with that.
Okay.
And a weight of 5 would be fine.
Okay. Head Start ECAP? No.
I have an outside voice. So, what we noticed was that the retrained as policies are updated or changed is not in the other one. So that version needs to be in one or the other. I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so is the recommendation for number 2 to be weighted NA and to take the language of retraining as updated or changed and add that to 108, number 1? Okay, so Lori's capturing that in the comment box. Licensing?
I have to ask those of you who deliver the service out there this question. When I think of orientation, I am really thinking that I'm just saying, you know, this is where this is how you find this is this. So do you really think that when you are orienting your staff that you are actually training them? If it came to child abuse, do you actually go through that? Do you go through? So in your mind, there would be no difference between the two? So then, I guess I need a little bit of time to think, because I'm almost thinking maybe the two need to be combined into one. Rather than in two places, but combine it into one. But I would want to capture the intent of both. And so, because when I think of training, I think of something different than I do of orientation. But I get what you're saying. If you're going through the orientation, you're already taking the time to go through it with them. So
Could we change the word orientation to training?
that's what I'm thinking, is that maybe in the orientation we change that to you must train all your staff to XYZ. And that would satisfy our concern with it.
Okay. Yeah, so are those edits that we need to make live, or are those, we've captured the intent and we can send that to the Dell tech writers to rewrite?
I thought we just agreed on changing 108 wording from orientation to training and that would satisfy Dell's
That's what they said.
requirement?
We've not taken consensus on it, but that was the recommendation.
Right.
Is that a change that we can make right here in the room right now, or do we want to send it to the
I
tech
would,
writers to
no, I
rewrite?
would suggest we make it right now.
Okay. So then for number 2 here, we want to strike retrained as policies are updated or changed, and weight number 2 NA. Is that correct? I think what I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're striking retrained as policies are updated or changed, because that is going to move into 108.1, and we are weighting this NA.
I don't think we need to get rid of that part. I mean, we're just kind of deciding whether it needs to be in this place at all.
Okay. Yeah, so let's look at 108.1. So 108.1, an early learning provider must develop and deliver the delivery of an early learning staff orientation, so there's wordsmithing there, specific to the early learning program and premises. Orientation topics must include those listed in subsection 2 of this section, which we are going to talk about soon. Providers must be oriented prior to working with children as state or federal regulations change.
I would suggest we change every word that says orientation, oriented to, to train,
Okay.
training.
So rather than orientation topics, would you change that to training topics? Okay.
That would also mean the title of this WAC would be Program-Based New Staff Training.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then training topics, that next sentence, we would change orientation to training. Okay, and providers must be trained prior to working with children and as state and federal regulations and program policies change. So would that capture the retraining that we took out of 110.2? So you have to be trained as they change. So that's capturing the intent of the retraining. Okay? So that's old language. I don't even think we've looked at 2 yet. So I want us to go back up to 1, just so that everybody can see the changes that we've made, because you took consensus on this yesterday. Is that correct? Oh, we've not? Okay. So keep these changes in mind. Let's go back to 110 and let's finish 110 so that we're not jumping back and forth, because it is a lot of scrolling. So 2, all early learning program staff must be trained on early learning program policies. Can that whole thing be removed?
I propose that that be removed and moved to 108.
That sentence?
Number 2.
Okay. So in a note, that we've moved that to 108 subsection 1, the training and the retraining. Okay? So I just want to get consensus on what we've done, because that was a lot of changes, and we already took consensus on the language. So though it feels repetitive, I just want to make sure that everybody in the room is fine with taking the language from 2, removing it from this section. We moved it up to 108.1. It's a weight of 5 up there, and we're going to take consensus on that after this section. Do I have agreement in the room? See, licensing says yes. Family home says yes. Parents? Yes. Head Start ECAP? They say yes. And centers, yes. Okay. So let's finish this subsection. 110. So we did 2. 3 was proposed to be moved to another section, so that was already stricken. So we took consensus on, 3, what should be in the policies, and so this was originally 5, but we're going to renumber it as 3. So this says an early learning provider must have and follow written policies requiring staff working with the same classroom or group of children to share applicable information regarding, and you can see below, the health needs, allergies, medication, the daily schedule, significant educational or developmental information, communication from family, information to be shared with the family, and a plan for transitioning staff or covering breaks at a weight of 5. So let's take consensus on the language. From licensing, I see 5s. From Head Start ECAP, I see 5s. From centers, I think they're still discussing, so I'll come to parents. I see 2 5s. 3 5s, 4 5s. All right, and family home providers, I see 2 4s and the rest 5s. So we come to centers, consensus on the language. Okay, so I'm seeing 5s from centers. All right, let's take consensus on the weight. This is a weight of 5. Okay, so I see from parents, I see all 5s from parents, I see all 5s from licensing. From Head Start ECAP, I see all 5s. From family home, so I'm hearing some mumbling from both family home and centers. Do you need 1 minute to caucus with your team? All right, let's take a 1-minute break. Yes, let's take a 2-minute caucus. All right, that 2-minute caucus time is up, so we were waiting to take consensus on number 3. It's a weight of 5, and we wanted to hear from Family Home and from the center teams. All right, so Family Home. I see 3s and 2 4s. So we'll hear your concerns in a moment from centers. I see 3s and 1 4. All right, let's hear the concerns of the 3s, and we'll document those.
We just feel the weight of 5 is too high. We'd rather have it at a 4.
Okay. Centers?
We have the same comment. I mean, we can see how some of these could be a little bit higher, but then, you know, if one teacher forgets to tell another teacher that Johnny's going home a little early today, we don't feel like that's a 5. So it's just, we
Okay.
feel like the weight's a little high.
Okay, great. So we've documented your concerns on number 3. Oh, okay. That's good because we're just coming to the end of section 110. Licensing?
I just want to be sure, we didn't remove what was number 4, I don't know what number it is now, the list of things?
No. So if we scroll back up, that is now number 2.
Okay, we left it. Okay,
We left
I
it.
just wanted to be positive. Thank you.
All right, so give yourselves a round of applause. We have consensus on section 110. We're going to add that to our thermometer, and then how much time is needed to caucus?
At least 10.
So 10 minutes? Okay, so since we're scheduled to come up on a break, we're going to take a 10-minute team caucus with your TA resolution groups, and then a 10-minute break. So we will see you all back here at 4:05? Thank you. At 4:05. So go caucus with your team for 10 minutes first, and then take a 10-minute break.
They must be 18 years old, have the high school diploma, and then they must get an additional certificate in 5 years of this becoming effective. So like everybody else, they have 5 years to get that first thing. And then their professional development progress is documented annually like everybody else, compliance with all the pre-service stuff. This is the bigger one. As teachers now alone. For 6 hours a day, with all the programming, you have 18 to 14 years old, you can
It's 50% of the classroom's operating. So it's not clear to me, and I asked that question because 50% of the day, 6 hours a day, or the 40% of the sum total of the entire year. It's not clear. I think it's big and I told him before that. Meaning that in 5 years, we're not gonna all of a sudden, all these people. Say that again.
50%, so if you're open 20 it's 20 hours.
We don't know that. They might open in the room. No, well, we don't know. Directors, assistant directors, that one's it's the middle certificate. Because directors and that will have the state certificate. And then lead teacher and the home absentee have a short certificate. Then, assistant teachers don't have the. Well, then maybe we can define it. It's like 12 credits or 27 credits and 47. You mean that?
Okay.
To vape. They went outside to vape.
Yes, there were no signs posted. Part of Vape Nation. We actually have AIDS is good. AIDS is good. other ones it says, sorry, it says single classroom. So it's our understanding that people one person's
That was 1 minute warning. 1 minute. Okay, we're going to add 5 more minutes to the team caucus.
Do we need any additional time for team caucuses or sidebars? 3 minutes? All right, we're putting 3 minutes on the clock.
You're playing my bubble.
Okay, are we ready to reconvene? Yeah, unless you wanted to do the other first. Okay. Blinded. Okay, we're going to resume with looking at section 108. Okay, section 108 is on program-based new staff training. As a reminder, this was negotiated in September. It is in the queue for consensus today with revised language from Dell. So let's take a look at each of the subsections here. Subsection 1, this has a weight of 5. An early learning provider must develop and deliver an early learning staff training specific to the early learning program and premises. Training topics must include those listed in subsection 2 of this section. Providers must be trained prior to working with children and as state or federal regulations and program policies change. That has a weight of 5. Subsection 2, also back for consensus with revised language. Subsection 2 has a weight of NA and reads, training topics must include but are not limited to staff policies listed in WAC 170, 300, 0110 and Chapter 43, 215 RCW, Department of Early Learning, Chapters 170, 300, Foundational Quality Standards for Early Learning Programs, and 170.06, Background Checks. WAC, it's referencing that. An early learning, is that provider? An early learning provider must document the delivery of an early learning staff training. It's been moved from 1. Okay? Yes. All right, subsection 2, or and so that what is listed too is that just the sub points under the point right above. That was the original language, and the language in the box was the Dell reference. Okay. So the listing is replaced with the reference back to certain standards. Okay. So we have 2 subpoints here in 0108. All right, let's take consensus on subpoint 1 with a weight of 5. Family home, starting it out with 5s and 4s. Licensing, come back to you. Parents, come back to you. Head Start ECAP, 5s. Do you need some rereading? Okay. Just for clarification, let's reread what we're taking consensus on. An early learning provider must develop and deliver an early learning staff training specific to the early learning program and premises. Training topics must include those listed in subsection 2, which we just struck through the list, but it does reference back to the other regulation or standard of this section. Providers must be trained prior to working with children and as state or federal regulations and program policies change. It has a weight of 5.
So we can't really strike through the list because that list is not all inclusive of the other list.
Okay.
We need to, I mean, we will need to do some tweaking to take out duplication, but they are not exactly the same.
Okay. Thank you for that notation. Had a comment from Center Based.
My comment is just in the first section, it references section 2, which then turns around and references section 110. So it's kind of like trying to figure out what you're looking at. I think that needs to be redone because it doesn't really make sense.
So subsection 1 references subsection 2, which in turn, subsection 2 references 110. Okay. All right, so based on the recommendation that we remove the strike through of the list, we should probably take consensus again since that was taken on a different vote than what we have now. So with the addition back in of the list, a weight of 5, and the language that's been read for subsection 1, can we take consensus? Licensing, 5s. Family home, 4s. Parents, 5s. Head Start ECAP, 5s. And center-based.
I still don't think this is going to be very easy for staff to follow because you're asking them to look at subsection 2. And then when they look at subsection 2 says these plus go to 110, and you also need to look at that. So can we not put everything together in one spot so that we're not having to go between different sections to try to figure out we need this and this? Because that's right, it's like a scavenger hunt.
So are we capturing that request, but voting on the intent of the language here and the weight?
I would propose that we vote on the intent of this language, but with the intent that we ask the writers to look at combining 108 with 110. And see if we can't find a way to make that work. But one is about, they are a little different, so I don't know whether that will confuse the WAC or make it cleaner. So I'd like to propose that we have them look at it.
Just a clarifying question. We're just voting on 1, not the re-entry of the list on number 2 at this point, right?
Right, we're voting on
Okay.
1 with a weight of 5. Comment from Family Home?
Yeah, I think maybe we should do what Judy said, try to combine them, but I don't think we should vote on the intent. I think we should move on and try to combine, the tech team tries to combine them, and then we vote on it.
Okay. So this will be sent for TA resolution and rewrite or rewriting, and then it'll come back. Okay, did we capture that? Okay. All right, so we are on to subsection 2. Is that sending 1 and 2 out? Okay. All right, so that gets us to we on to 110? It's okay. Okay. We're at 110. Okay. Are we ready to take a look at the language revisions on 107? Okay. Okay, so we're going to switch to 107 in-service training.
So we're going to go ahead and start with 107 in-service training, and Deltec is going to try to do the combo with 110 and 108 while we do this, knowing that we have some limited time. Okay, so this is the rewrite from Deltec. I'll read it in full, and then we'll come back through, per usual. Okay, number 1, family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, lead teachers, assistant teachers, and aides that are counted in ratio must complete in-service training requirements of this section. After 12 months of cumulative employment, in-service training begins unless indicated otherwise. And that is still a weight of NA.
I forgot, what does unless otherwise indicated mean?
At least unless indicated otherwise in A or B right under it. Is that right? Yes.
It's in the bubble.
The bubble was
Yeah, but that was before we changed the language to say this doesn't mean you have 12 months. Okay, so we should take that out.
So
let me read through the whole. Oh, go ahead.
It just means that all of this continuing ed is going to start after your first year.
Right, but what's unless indicated otherwise?
Unless it says this is part of your first year, down in
In A
another
and B,
section.
yeah.
In A and B.
So we'll read A and B. You might not need it. Let's just read it with the rewrite. So A, the department enhancing quality of early learning training must be completed within 36 months of being hired in a licensed facility unless the provider has completed an alternative training reviewed and approved by the department. Equal hours count towards the 10 hours of in-service training required each year, a weight of 4. So then we'll go to 1B. After an early learning provider completes the equal training required in subsection 9 of this section, which is now going to be A, 1A, they must complete a minimum of 10 hours of in-service training each fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. In-service training, 1, must include one or more of Washington State's core competencies for early care and education. 2, may be met by completing credit-bearing early childhood education delivered by an institution of post-secondary education as approved by the department. And 3, no more than 5 hours may be carried over to the following fiscal year. You cannot exceed a 12-month period without training, a weight of 4. Okay, so I'll point out that the above had the set of people that needed that training, and this separate section C talks about these other specific people that need different types of training. So family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, and lead teachers must complete the renewal trainings that include business and leadership practice training and child development training. The renewal trainings are completed on a 3-year cycle that begins the date you complete the first training, but no later than 12 months after completing the Enhancing Quality Training series. These trainings count towards the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected must progress in competency and include the following topics by year. Year 1, business and leadership. Year 2, child development. Year 3, elective year to select from the Washington State Early Care and Education core competencies. And that's it. The last one is still the same. They send it to the Deltec writers, and they've incorporated a lot of the, they've tried to incorporate all of the feedback that you gave. So if we scroll back to the top, you can jump in, Michelle, if I'm missing any of this, but I can help point out some of the things that they incorporated, and then I'll give you guys time. So in number 1, you'll see that it's family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, lead teachers, assistant teachers, and aides. basically everyone but substitutes and volunteers, right? So everyone, yeah. So now it says all of staff basically need in-service training, and they need it starting after 12 months of cumulative employment. In-service training begins, right? So then A tells you about the equal training, and then B tells you after you do that, you need 10 hours, and these are the requirements around it. Then you move into this next section, and this is specific to the leadership positions. Family home licensee, center director, assistant director, and program supervisors and lead teachers. And this is specific to the renewal trainings that these leadership positions must take. And the big one here, the renewal trainings are completed on a 3-year cycle. So you'll take business and leadership year 1, and you won't take it again for another 3 years. So it's giving you flexibility on the other remaining hours in that 10-hour.
That's not a change from before.
And business and leadership is required by CCDF.
Right. I mean, I think what we were hoping for is that we would get rid of the other parts.
The child development and elective year.
Yes.
So one other thing they put in, the sentence, training selected must progress in competency include the following topics. That was the attempt to say that you can pick within your competency. You can choose which ones for the remaining hours. Did I miss anything, Michelle? Do you want to, maybe we'll hear from Del Tech and give you guys some time for a team caucus, and then we'll hear back.
So when we rewrote the language, we kept child development and business leadership in for a couple of reasons. First of all, oh, is that better? I've never been told to say something louder. This is like alternate universe for me right now. So we, the business leadership and child development is a CCDF piece. And so we wanted to have something in the WAC that could be that placeholder so that as CCDF ruling changes or evolves, there's a place that that could live instead of having to add something new on top of what you're already doing. So that was the intent that was in that piece of it. The other intent is the fact that we know that research shows that when you are taking classes and having your continuing ed, that it's going deeper is going to have a better impact on change in practice. And so the idea that the one and done training doesn't necessarily have as deep of an impact on change in practice. And so the goal is in this that each year you can have a focus or a way to go deeper on a topic area so that you can see that change in practice.
Yeah, and I never had a problem with the business one. It was everything else. Because I do think it should be left up to the Senate directors or whatever, and for our purposes, the way that we're structured, we will ask for a variance here. And I also, I hope that what this progression thing says indicates that Dell is committing to actually providing that, because that has been the most complained about part of, actually not this, the leadership part that we had in the other thing is that you could never find anything, and when you did, it was a complete waste of your time. So this doesn't exist now, a progression in this way. So yeah. I would prefer that it just say, every 3 years you have to get your business thing or a Dell approved alternative.
So your preference, I'm going to take as a proposed language change.
Yes, we would propose that we get rid of the year 2, year 3 thing and just say that every 3 years you need to get business and leadership training I think you have an idea about a specific business and leadership training, or is this?
As I was saying, this is a way to have that placeholder for CCDF. So as that evolves or changes and it's dictating what kind of training we're supposed to be providing, which one of it definitely says child development, it definitely says business and leadership. And so those two are there as that placeholder, because instead the other alternative would be if we didn't have it, then we'd have to add something on top of what's already in the WAC. And so it was our way to try to not have to do that. But the proposed language, I think, that makes sense. We have it in the Enhancing Quality Early Learning, so we could do that in the...
Yeah, but we don't want to be taking that one.
You don't want what?
You know how we feel about that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the child development thing is also required for center directors?
That's right. It's required for, I think, the caregiver. The caregiver.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, which means everyone. Yeah.
Meaning that it's captured up above the child development, or needs to be in this sentence down here?
It needs to be here because it has to be ongoing. Yeah.
So the sentence should say, so it's not a provider.
Okay, well, you're
Family
wearing me
licensee
down. I
must
mean,
complete the
we can
renewal
work around
trainings that
this.
include business leader training. Can you just change the sentence, the renewal trainings must be completed every 3 years? Right here, I'm going to complete it. And then, okay, after that.
Yeah, we would like a little bit more flexibility, just to say every 3 years you have to have training in these areas. I mean, having to do it in a specific year seems over particular to me.
So you want to propose new language?
Yeah, we would just propose that, because since this is required in CCDF, that these people every 3 years must complete training in business and leadership and child development.
So we're trying this out. These people must complete the renewal trainings that include business leadership practice training and child development training. The renewal trainings must occur every 3 years. These trainings count towards the in-service requirement of 10 hours. You want to keep that, I assume? Okay. And then I think your proposal is to strike everything under it. Licensing.
Because I'm a paper person and I struggle with this, can I just have a note made that we make sure that the intent is cleaned up, that we're talking about these specific trainings must happen at least once every 3 years, not that ongoing training only has to happen once every 3 years. It's hard for me to really read this and see this, and I just want to make sure that's not lost.
Yeah, the way it's written currently does not say that, right? So I think you would want it to say family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, and lead teachers must complete the business and leadership practice training and child development training every 3 years. Renewal trainings, like all other renewal trainings, must be completed as well, or something like that. It's really bad language, but. Because Michelle, C is supposed to specifically talk about renewal. There's two concepts in C, right? One is that these specific people need renewal trainings. And the second concept is that they have to take business and leadership and child development every 3 years. Those are the two concepts we want to capture.
The first concept is there is renewal training, and the second concept is those renewal trainings have to be in those two topic areas. And but you're right.
Have to include.
Yeah, has to include those topic
So Lori, can we just try really quick? Must complete the renewal trainings, period. Must complete the renewal training, period. Must complete renewal trainings. For very first sentence of C.
So what if it just said the following topics every 3 years? Instead on the very, kind of like.
Can you either come up or?
So what you're proposing is, instead of saying must progress in competency and include the following topics by year, year 1, year 2, year 3, you're going to say progress in competency, include the following topics every 3 years.
Okay. Family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, and lead teachers must complete renewal trainings. And then we say these trainings count toward the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected must include, do we need that one? That one's referring to just business and leadership and.
No.
These trainings count towards the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected must include business and leadership and child development every 3 years. We can stop.
I think the tech writers can clean it up, but the idea is every 3 years you have to have renewal training on these topic areas. Yeah. It's
Yes,
an
family home
orange.
providers.
I agree that I think we should move on, but I would also like to say that there are some complicated thoughts going into this, and I think that it would be beneficial to us if when the tech writers write this, they imagine themselves not being able to speak English as a first language.
And I would like to, is it possible for us to strike through the year 1, year 2, year 3 stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's strike through that first. Year 1, 2, 3. We'll get this as close, the concepts down, and then we'll take a consensus. Okay. These people must complete renewal trainings, period. These renewal trainings count toward the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected, we want to strike the progress in competency. Yes? No?
Still has to progress. No, it does still have to progress.
Okay. Trainings must and include, and you strike out the following topics and just say, must include business and leadership and child development every 3 years. Okay, I think that's I don't think it's worth wordsmithing any further. I think we got the general concept down, and we'll measure consensus. Do you need me to read it again in full? Yes, okay. Family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, program supervisors, and lead teachers must complete renewal trainings. Yep, you can click that. These renewal trainings count toward the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected must progress in competency and include the business and leadership and child development every 3 years. Centers.
I think our main issue right now is over the must progress in competency, just because if there's not something available that's progressive past what we've already done, we don't want to be held accountable for that the training is not provided for us that progresses past. Because if somebody has a master's in business, there's not going to be a STAR training that progresses past the competency that they already have in business and leadership.
What are we trying to say when we say progress in competency?
I think, Kat, you explained it was you don't want them to take the exact same training over and over again.
The exact same thing. Progress in competency. Imagine if I only spoke Somali. Progress in competency. I mean, I would say you can't take the same thing.
Right, and in the beginning of this, we talked about culturally sensitive wording so that, and so what Kathy is saying is by saying, I understand it, and I could explain it to her, but explaining it to an English language learner would be difficult.
I think there's a simpler way to say that.
So if you're okay, we can leave it to the Del Tech writers. I mean, this whole sentence is, the whole section is not well written grammatically. So if we can agree to the concept and have them.
Lori, will you add that comment, say the Del Tech writers?
That the term progress in competency is difficult to understand.
Difficult for the language learners. Thank you.
So I'd like to measure consensus on the intent, though, of this. We don't need to wordsmith anymore, I don't think, as a large group. Sure, so we'll do a 1-minute team caucus. Do you want to? Okay, we'll come back to that. 1-minute team caucus. On the intent of C. I didn't. Other people didn't work, but many of us were. And then it was. And I was really made myself stage. Not looking at emails, you know, All right, centers, you called for the team caucus. So we'll see if you have a comment. I know that licensing had a comment right before in queue. Go ahead.
Just talking it over, could we change it from training selected must be varied and relevant and include the following topics. Instead of progress in competency, have it say varied and relevant. Because if somebody has a master's in early childhood education or a master's in business, they're not going to be able to find things that progress in competency unless they go to the doctorate level, which I don't think we're asking anybody to do. And so this will still provide that somebody can't take math for toddlers 5 years in a row and have it count. But it's letting you decide what that variety is and what the relevancy for you as a provider.
So Lori and I are sidebarring to try to capture what you just said, while trying to also accommodate this progress and competency in a way that hopefully can match with what you're saying. So we'll try it. The training selected must be varied in content and relevant to staff's education experience and build on the individual's knowledge base. Okay. So these folks must complete renewal trainings. These renewal trainings count towards the in-service requirement of 10 hours per year. Training selected must be varied in content, relevant to staff's education and experience, and build on the individual's knowledge base, and include business leadership and child development every 3 years. So obviously grammar will clean up after that, but I think the intent is there. Blyson, do you still have a comment? Or
we think that is not what the intent was. The intent was really to make sure that we were constantly enriching the knowledge, enhancing the knowledge level of people and growing them. And it also, by putting that in, Dell would then be kind of on the spot in terms of developing those progressive kind of training. It's kind of like we are thinking about it kind of like if you're in college and you take English 101 and then you take English 102 and eventually you get up to English 450 or whatever if you're an English major. But not sure this meets, but I'm not the PD writer.
all right, we'll go back to center. Go ahead. Okay. So Lori's pointed out to me that we have 2 minutes left before public comment. So our proposal is to get your last comments on what we have so far for C. we'll circle back up and make sure we get your other comments on the other sections since we did not talk about them yet. So,
So we're going to stick with the thought that yes, indeed, we are asking the Department of Early Learning to be able to offer courses that are progressive for where we are when we have advanced degrees, instead of being remedial and being step 1, 2, 3, and wasting what feels like not enhancing our knowledge base. So I think it's true. We are kind of asking them, if they're going to mandate that we take their courses, that their courses be higher level. Or we could take courses that would give us STARS credit and college credit, and that's what we would prefer.
okay. And I think that's what, you're just clarifying what you meant by relevant to the staff's education. Got it. Any other comments about this section that you felt like weren't captured? I think we're close. Okay, let's circle back up to the top to make sure that you have a time to reflect on the new changes here. So let's see. All right, so let's start with number 1. We did not vote on 1. You guys started commenting on C first. So if we can vote on 1, I would be happy to do so. Let's try to measure consensus on 1 and a weight of NA. The weight is NA, because the weight is on the specific A and B. All right, licensing, all 5s. Family child care, 1, 5, and the rest 4s. Parents, Head Start ECAP, all 5s. Parents, 5s. Centers, 5s. Great. Nice job. All right, now let's look at A. This is about equal training, and the major change here is just changing it, the wording to say completed within 36 months. In the big, yes, unless there's an alternative. So that's the, sorry, those are the 2 major changes. So I'll measure consensus on 1A. It's a weight of 4. Licensing, 5s. Head Start ECAP. Parents. Okay, Head Start ECAP, sorry, back to you since you're ready. 5, 4, 3. Didn't get everyone, so I'll come back. Parents, 5s. You have a comment.
We don't feel comfortable voting on this unless we know what that alternate training that's going to be approved by Dell. Having it up in the air like that is too ambiguous.
Licensing?
Then I would propose that we table it, because at this point, that information isn't available, and we can't, you don't want us to make something up. So I guess we would then table this.
1A. Okay, measuring consensus on tabling 1A. Yes.
I want to make a clarifying point that this phrase that starts with unless the provider, that was added at the request of everybody earlier today who said,
So,
you know,
Lori,
it may be that we have other training that we've taken that we want to come to use as a substitute for this requirement. And so I want to make sure in my that I'm capturing what you want here in this comment. The way I read this would be a case-by-case basis that someone has taken some other training that they feel that fits the bill. And so they go to their licensor and say, I've already done this other training over here. Does that meet this requirement? And then the licensor would make that decision.
Sorry, you actually raised your hand first.
Yeah, so it's not exactly what we had suggested. What we had suggested was to write in that this was not required if you had any of those certificates or an ECE degree. Or an alternate thing, but this is a way more vague than we had desired. I mean, we probably wouldn't block it, but this is approaching what we were looking for, but not actually. We actually do not want to have to go through individuals licensor approval for each one of our people who is. We want to not have to do this if we have the certificate.
So I think I can anticipate Dell's response in that because it is a rule, it doesn't actually work to put in something so specific like an ECE certificate because it doesn't give flexibility in the long term, maybe like 10 years from now, right? Because we're not rewriting the WAC every 3 years, every 2 years. So this is saying that without having
I'm just
to
saying
write
that
an actual
there are a lot of other sections that speak specifically about the ECE stackable certificates, and if they can be in there, I don't understand why they couldn't be in here.
That's my guess, so I'll let Dell Tech actually respond. Sorry. Go to you next.
So the difference is, when we're talking about qualifications, we're saying the qualification is you need this education. And then in implementation, you have different ways to meet that qualification if you don't have, there's other options. So this is the same thing here, is that the choice is you have to have enhancing quality early learning, and there can be an alternate path by having this other option. And so when we go to thinking about the policies that will support this, we definitely agree that if you have, say, a state certificate, that would meet the enhancing quality early learning and you wouldn't need to take it. But that won't show up in the WAC because that would be considered a policy. Yeah. I know it's not satisfying you, but that's
It's requiring that we trust you, but I don't completely. I'll just be honest.
Right, I know.
Okay, so let's hear from Kat, and what Lori's going to do is capture that comment that this isn't specific enough and that you would like to see, for example, the ECE certificate, state certificate. or
Okay,
equivalent.
so Michelle was talking about policy. And so those possible alternative trainings that could be approved, there can be a list in policy implementation that is something that is public accessible and transparent for all of us to see, but not inclusive. The list could, okay, I want the certificates listed in the policy, I want EA listed in the policy, I want, CDAs listed in the policy. That's how specific I need to be? And anything else that could be relevant.
We just want to be respectful of the work being done in the other room. And if they're saying that employees have longer than 36 months to get those stackable certificates complete, we don't want to overrule that and say, well, if you don't have it done within 36 months, then you now have to take this equal. So we want to respect the work that's being done there, that if those stackable certificates are going to be part of an equivalency, that we're not overrunning that and saying, but if you don't get it done within 36 months, you have to take this training in addition to the stackable certificate that you're now working on. So we just want to be respectful of the work being done there and look at the timelines to compare how much time are they being given there versus the time being given here.
Okay, with that, I think we officially have to table this one, 1A. Yes.
So Rachel's comment kind of feeds into why you don't necessarily want all the alternatives to be specifically listed here. Because they may be, so it really does come to implementation and having, as Kat suggested, a non-exclusive list somewhere.
Okay. I don't see everyone from the other groups come back yet, so I'm going to just take that quick opportunity to ask to look at 1B. We have 3 people for public comment. While they're in the bathroom, let's take a quick look at B and just document any of the comments you may have on B. Does anyone have comments on 1B? All right, so I've been told that everyone actually is back. So we'll pause here now that you guys are in the room. So we're gonna pause here. We'll table this section 0107. Is that right? And we'll move into public comment. So I see 2 back here and 2 over here. Great, Hallie, you're starting. So thank you all from the public for joining us today. We're gonna have a timer, per usual. We'll limit to 3 minutes per public comment.
Hi, my name is Tom Emery. I run child care centers in Puyallup, and I'm a member of Washington Child Care Centers Association. And sitting here listening as I did another session, I appreciate your hard work and thoughtful deliberation on a mind-boggling array of issues. Thank you. I've jotted down a couple of, right here? There we go. All right. I've jotted down a couple of alternatives. You may well have already considered this, but I want to throw them in. The specifics of how do you keep a child care center going if you can't hire teachers because there aren't enough lead teachers with early childhood education certificates, et cetera. Those kinds of things we child care centers are wrestling with on these proposals. The majority of centers we've talked to, and there are many, say we're not sure we can stay in business with that kind of a system. There are very few, percentage-wise, there are a few lead teachers that have ECE certificates. They're not coming out of the colleges in any mass numbers. And Clover Park Technical College recently explained to a senator why that's happening. Yes, we're giving out ECE certificates, they're earning them, but none of them are going into the child care centers. They can make more money using them in social services and in public schools and get the benefits, so they're not coming to us. So a simplistic view might be, hey, education's important, let's make them all get ECE certificates, but that is unlikely to happen, and so we're left without teachers. And we educate the bulk of kids that are getting ready for school. In fact, 75% of kids in out-of-home child care are in centers, and we need to be able to do that to get them ready for school. So we have some alternatives just for you to think about, and you may well have thought of all these and got them all figured out already. Oh, in addition, our current teachers are saying, you make us go back to school after what we've done already, and we're going to go somewhere else. And some of them say, hey, I'm a working mom. I'm not going to invest the time and money going back into education. So we don't want a revolving door where we constantly have to hire new teachers. Why? Because it's not education that's the prime determination of success in school. It's actually experience. Study after study shows this. Experienced teachers are going to be able to do the job with kids. Prime consideration above education. So here's some suggestions. And we hope the negotiation rulemaking process can provide specifics in this area. First of all, we've had to go to on-the-job training. As I said, we're not getting them coming to us trained. So I have a college teacher, professor coming to each of my centers each week, working individually with the teacher, each teacher every week to train them. That's one possibility. Another alternative possibility on the job again is I've hired a teacher trainer who's qualified full-time at one at each of my 2 centers to make sure that the kids are getting the education that they need, training the teachers one-on-one. The third possibility, early achievers. They're in a huge number of child care centers. Early achievers should also be an avenue for teachers to become qualified to be a lead teacher. And the fourth possibility is experience. And as I said, all the studies show that's number one. I'd hate to say, sorry, you don't have an ECE certificate, you can't be a teacher anymore. But if you have the experience and the training that's already required, it really needs to be, I believe, considered to be an alternative to an ECE certificate. One other, and that's directors. My senior director at the larger of our centers, licensed for 158 children, who's been a director for us for 20 years, says, I'm qualified, I'm very experienced, I'm very good at my job. I make sure that the kids are getting an excellent education and loving care. If you make me go back to school, I'm going to quit and I'm going to work for some other field, and I hope that doesn't happen. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Ginger Still. I have 2 child care centers in Tri-Cities, and to kind of piggyback on the alternative pathways, I do want to say that first, that today there was, I thought, a lot of really great work that I got to listen in on, and I was thinking to myself that, first of all, my mind is already kind of jumbled, so I started thinking, gosh, you guys must really be feeling it, and God love you for spending all the time and hours, because it's a big job. And I was happy with the progress that was made today. I was really, thought some good work came out. But in addition to that, and we're talking about different pathways, so while the ECE certificate may not meet the needs for everybody in care, we do need to be thinking about those alternative pathways in different ways, and it's been discussed, I already know that, but just really putting some thought and effort into how we can retain our staff, meet the needs of people who, you know, maybe the working moms, or maybe our older staff that are seasoned, are, you know, people like me, maybe 40, 50 years, I'm not 40, but 50s, you know, maybe wouldn't want to go back to school. So, so I think we just need to kind of look at that whole thing. And I do want to just make one little comment about the initial certificate. We spent a lot of time listening to the importance of the initial certificate and how that's going to raise the quality. But I just want to put this out there because I've actually recently been to classes for that. I mean, I already have ECE, but some of the classes I retook recently. And while the intro to early childhood is very fascinating in the history, it doesn't necessarily relate to how to work with children. So I think that the training and stuff that we have, that our teachers are getting, that we're putting all this emphasis on, it needs to be relevant to the job at hand too, because to say that a lead teacher with an initial certificate is more qualified than the person who has maybe 40 or 50 clock hours or 100 clock hours if they've been in the field for years is better qualified than that person. They're not, probably. And I think we've already discussed about some that come out of the ECE programs that actually have their 2-year degree that are sometimes less qualified to actually be hands-on with the children than somebody who has years of experience, you know, just the initial drive, the love for children. I mean, when I hire people, because let's face it, the pool is slim pickings, and so a lot of them don't come with the training prior, and so I'm looking for, do you have the personality and do you have the temperament, and are you going to make it past week 1? Because working with children is difficult and it's challenging, and there's, you know, I tell my teachers, until you've been working in this field for at least 3 years, you probably really haven't caught a clue as to what you're really doing. You can be good and you can be proficient at your job, but it takes that long before you experience all the different things with kids to really be able to say, oh, okay, I recognize this and I recognize that, and that's how and this child is this way, and so I'm going to approach this child that way versus, you know, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I think the years of experience and stuff like that is very valuable, and I just think that education is good and that's a great thing, but I think that the other stuff is equally as important.
Okay. So I think that was all of our public that came to comment today. If I'm missing anyone, they already said no. So thank you again to the public that joined us. Thank you for your comments and for just observing. Lori, Luba, do you have any comments as we close out today? Tina, do you have any?
I do.
Okay.
So, phew, you guys tired? Great job. I know that these 2 days have been the longer days that we've ever had in interim, but luckily tomorrow is Sunday. I want to, we didn't do this at lunch, I want to recognize the people whose birthdays were in January and December. Birthdays? December, January, last month and this month. Tyler? Who were they? Oh, Hallie! And Tyler. Anyone else? Candy. All right, so as is customary, I think it'd be a great way to end the day to sing happy birthday to the folks that have birthdays in December and January. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everybody. Happy birthday to you. Awesome. Hope you guys had a very happy birthday. If you didn't see, there are the birthday cupcakes back there, so if you want one on the way out. Tomorrow we're going to start off by honoring the work that 0100 did out there. We're going to measure consensus on the 5 out of 8 that you guys reached consensus on in the small group, and if we can make it into the other 3 that you didn't, we'll do it in a full group. And then from there we'll move into a presentation about the checklist. Okay, so that's it. Reminder, you can leave your stuff, the doors will be locked. So see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you, everyone.